Welcome to California Edition. My name is Brad Pomerance. I'm glad you're with us today. On this episode, we'll be speaking with two gentlemen looking to join boards of supervisors and one gentleman who's on a board of supervisors. We're going to start with Kevin Jeffries. He's currently a member of the California State Assembly and running for a seat on the board of supervisors in Riverside County. Sir, we thank you for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Why are you running for the board of supervisors?
It's an opportunity to get back in local government where I started. I mean, I'm a small business owner. My wife and I have owned our business for 30 years. And so being back involved with the local community, I love it. And it's actually an opportunity to make a difference versus the state legislature where you can't get anything done.
It's tough. I mean, you go from 80 or 120 to 5.
Yeah.
I mean, there were literally 5 on the Riverside County Board of Supervisors.
I've done water boards and park boards in LAFCO, and when I got to the state legislature, I'd never been a part of anything so dysfunctional in my life.
It's interesting because you've told me that before, and I can feel your depth of emotion.
Yeah.
It's not, you're just not blowing smoke. I mean, you really have not, can I say, enjoyed your time in Sacramento?
Well, look, it's an honor and privilege to be in the
course.
legislature, but when you can't get anything done and you see California in such trouble, financial trouble, unemployment trouble, and you can't get the rest of the group to agree to fix it, it's very frustrating.
And I know that there are 4 cities in Riverside County that are beyond frustrated.
Yes.
These are 4 cities that recently incorporated. And when they incorporated, they expected to get a certain chunk of money from the vehicle license fee. Last year or 2 years ago, that money was siphoned off. And then a bipartisan majority, I think supermajority, in the Capitol voted to restore that money.
Yes.
And then what did the governor do?
Governor vetoed it. Yeah.
I'm going to be honest with you. I'm surprised. I really am surprised. I didn't see it coming. Did you?
No, but we were worried because we didn't get the signals that we'd hoped to get that he was going to be on board with it. I mean, you just never know. The governor keeps his,
any governor
plays it close to the vest. But this time we really did. We had an incredible bipartisan level of support, moved through both houses, went through the committees at the last minute, I'll give you that. And actually, the speaker wasn't even going to let it come to the floor at the last minute. So Assemblymember Jeff Miller and myself quickly met with the speaker and said, look, you got to let this through. It's been through the hearings. It's a good bill. He said, let me go check on it. He comes back out of his office and he says, you got 3 minutes. It'll be heard on the floor. Now, we weren't the authors.
Who does he check with? Do you have any
Well,
idea?
staff. I mean, his staff verifies that the bill has gone through the correct process and it's good. So,
I see.
But we weren't the authors. I mean, we were co-authors. The author was Assemblywoman Carter from San Bernardino.
A Democrat. And clearly, I mean, a friend.
Yeah, clearly, yeah. Great, absolutely outstanding legislator. And so she made the presentation on the floor, and I think maybe only had 2 or 3 no votes. I mean, it was...
And the same on the Senate side.
Yes.
So what happened? What did the veto message say?
The governor just felt, in so many words, that it was going to hurt the fund that is given back to the county. So you got to remember there was a cycle where the money was taken out of DMV and backfilling for public safety purposes under realignment. And we honestly today, I don't believe that's the case. I believe that what had been identified was a surplus pot of DMV revenues, VLF revenues, that wasn't going to go to the counties, but they're insisting it was. If we had known that the governor had those concerns in advance, we could have addressed them. And now we're looking at Jurupa in severe financial trouble, Wildemar on the edge as well, not as bad.
Well, we're talking about disincorporation.
Yes, we are.
I mean, this is very, very serious.
Yeah, it's very serious. Now, there's a chance that they could save this.
How?
Well,
Special
emergency legislation in January, urgency legislation, and working with the governor right off the bat, as soon as the new legislature is sworn in, immediately start on an urgency bill.
What about an override? Override his veto?
Oh, I would love to do that. But the last governor who had his veto overridden was some 25 years ago was Jerry Brown.
Oh, you're kidding.
Do
you know what it was?
No, I don't. But I don't think it's going to happen this time.
Even though it was, I mean, almost unanimous?
Even though.
Let me ask you, especially since you're running for the Board of Supervisors, is there a rescue that could come out of the county?
Well, I believe the county needs to come up with a temporary loan program to help these cities keep their essential services going. Because you got to remember, if these cities go under, all those services and responsibilities revert back to the county. And so certainly some revenue will go to the county. But I would make the argument that the county as a whole is better off if those services are done locally under local control instead of absorbed into this massive county
So you're not on the board yet. What do you know of the current board? Are they already looking into this issue about creating a rescue as you describe it?
I believe there is discussions to that. I don't know that anything formal has been presented because as I recall, the board was waiting to see what happened with this legislation.
Now here we are, and we're in a situation, at least if you're one of these 4 cities, on the verge literally of death. What happens over the next few months? You hope the county engages in a rescue. You hope for January. What's the next step?
Well, I think they have to. I think they have to plan for the worst and hope for the best. I think they really have to start planning that they're not going to see a rescue, make their decisions based on that until they see something else that comes onto the table.
I want to talk more broadly about this issue, and that is, it seems as if Sacramento is at war with local governments.
Clearly.
Like we've never seen before.
That's correct.
And it's interesting because Governor Brown had been a mayor of Oakland.
Yes.
And so over the last couple of years, and we've discussed this, we've seen redevelopment eliminated.
All right.
You know, whether it was a good decision or not, it's hard to know, but clearly there were some cities that were using it effectively.
Right.
We see these 4 cities suffering. What can we do to try to mend this relationship? Because, look, our cities are very important in this great state.
What we are witnessing, what we are living, is cannibalism of local government by the state government in order for the state government to survive. The state government has not figured it out that if the exodus of private sector jobs and businesses continues in California, it cannot recover. And until the state legislature figures it out, like local government has, cities and counties have figured out if they want to be successful, they want to be the place to do business and put people to work. The state of California has not figured that out. And until that change of attitude, culture, whatever you want to call it, occurs, this state is going to have a tough time recovering.
But we do see some movement on issues like regulatory reform. Even Democrats have talked about their desire for regulatory reform. We saw workers' comp reform.
Yes.
We saw pension reform. You know, I was speaking with Ricardo Lara, who you know, most would argue he's on the left side of the aisle. He's running for the state Senate. I said, what's your #1 priority should you enter the Senate? What does he say? Regulatory reform.
Right.
You know, so look, I mean, we're getting there, at least in rhetoric. Are we going to get there indeed?
We got close this year, but the efforts to reform CEQA, the biggest regulatory hurdle, just didn't come together. And it's one of the most important reforms that needs to occur.
I recently spoke with Michael Rubio, state senator, just appointed the head of the Environmental Quality Committee in Sacramento on the Senate side. What's your #1 priority? CEQA reform.
Yeah.
I keep hearing this.
Yeah. The challenge is we keep hearing it, but it doesn't happen.
So if you are elected to the Board of Supervisors, can you do something about it now that you're not in Sacramento? I mean,
yes, you
is it
can.
better?
The short answer is yes, you can, but you can't fix state and federal regulations. Those are going to be bad until those agencies fix. But you can fix the permit processing and the delays that are occurring in Riverside County.
How is it in Riverside County?
We are gauged as one of the worst of the worst.
Really?
For the unincorporated areas to try and get your permits to build your projects. People wait 5 to 7 years to get their permits to build something sometimes.
That's problematic, especially since this region has been hit so hard by the downturn, and this region desperately needs an infusion. I mean, there is some good news in that Amazon is opening a distribution center in San Bernardino, which desperately needs help.
Right. No, it's true.
Yeah,
but that's what you need to be. The city of Riverside has its act together.
Oh,
the
it's
city
the
of
county?
Riverside is doing a wonderful job. It's the county area where the county bureaucracy, the culture in there is just so troublesome.
His name is Kevin Jeffries. He's a member of the California State Assembly. He is running for the Board of Supervisors in Riverside County. When we come back, we'll be speaking with James Ramos. He is running for the San Bernardino County Board of Supervisors. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back. Welcome back to California Edition. Glad you're still with us. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, James Ramos, he is running for the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino County. He currently is on the Board of Trustees for the San Bernardino Community College District. Sir, I thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
What made you decide to run for the Board of Supervisors?
Well, really growing up in the area and seeing some of the challenges that have faced San Bernardino County and trying to create the job growth and really trying to create that positive atmosphere and that environment around San Bernardino County. Seeing what's been going on in San Bernardino County, those that read the paper know exactly what I'm talking about.
And let's talk about that, because I think it's fair to say the Board of Supervisors has seen better days. When you think about the fact that over the last few years, 3 board members have been indicted. One has pled guilty to a misdemeanor. The other 2 are still facing felony charges. That's tough. That's tough for a governmental body that totals 5.
It really is, and it's tough for those to work together on that 5 body board, but it's also tough to entice new businesses to come into San Bernardino County to work and to establish new jobs and new working environment because of that political unstableness that's there.
And what's interesting is if you look at the history of San Bernardino County, it kind of has a history of this shogun mentality where indictments seem to come down every 10 years. I mean, there was the indictment with, is it Jerry Eves? Is that his name? I mean, there's been a problem.
It seems like it's been ongoing, and I think, we really have to ask ourselves, what is it that we want San Bernardino County to look like in the next 4 to 5 years, right? And what we need to do is start working together to make sure that we're shedding that negative image that plagues San Bernardino County.
And what's even more unfortunate and frustrating is the largest city in the county, San Bernardino, has filed for bankruptcy, which is just a devastating blow on so many different levels. Now, I don't believe that city is in your district, or is a portion of it?
A portion of it is.
So, I mean, you're going to be representing a city that's hurting, that's suffering. Talk to me about that.
I think it really comes back down to the leaders that the community is electing. What we need to do is start electing community leaders that are willing to work together to create jobs. Jobs is the #1 issue that's facing our communities today and this whole region.
So let's talk about jobs, because I understand that one of the reasons why the city of San Bernardino went into a spiral was the closure of the Norton Air Force Base. And the city just has never really been able to bounce back. There is some good news. Amazon is opening a distribution center. I believe it's in city limits. But what else can be done to rehabilitate, revitalize the city, the county?
Well, specifically with the county, looking at the different things that are there, looking at the warehouse, the logistics, and the medical research field.
Right.
Making sure we're capitalizing on what's there, what's growing, what's been stable. And it doesn't take much. It takes really for you to step back and see what the economy is demanding. What's been stable in the economy during this downturn. And what's been stable are things that we need to get behind and support.
Right. I mean, it's hard to deny that the Inland Empire, one bright spot is warehousing. And when you think about the twin ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, those continue to chug along quite nicely. And so I would think that with the ports doing well, that better days are ahead for the Inland Empire overall.
I believe so, but it comes back to elected leaders working together, creating that new atmosphere in San Bernardino County, one that's a positive atmosphere that people are now willing to come in and understand there's a new era in San Bernardino County, one that you could set up shops and set up some of these new businesses.
Right.
Now are these ports, and they're coming through San Bernardino County, now they're willing to stop and become that distribution center all over again, rather than bypass us and go straight into Arizona.
Now, what's interesting is I guess it was 5 decades, municipalities had a tool to lure businesses, and it was called a redevelopment. I believe the county had a redevelopment agency. I know the city did. That tool is gone. The state eliminated that tool. So what tools does the county have to lure businesses in when you don't have redevelopment as that weapon, I guess you could say?
I think #1, you start to look at the infrastructural system with Measure I money in San Bernardino County.
Right.
Lobby also with the mayors of the cities to get the infrastructure going, because then you're going to be able to get the commerce coming in, the logistics going, so that people could visit some of the small businesses that are in our area and make it more appealing for people to open up the small business again, creating jobs. It comes back to infrastructure.
I want to also ask you about the housing crisis. We know that San Bernardino County was just hammered in the foreclosure crisis. And I'm not sure if you're aware, but the county, the current board, has floated this very interesting plan, which would have the county take mortgages by eminent domain. It's caused the financial institutions to go just haywire over it. In fact, I recently read that California's lieutenant governor has asked the Department of Justice, the U.S. Department of Justice, to investigate whether there's collusion with regard to those that are attacking this eminent domain plan. Have you looked at that? Do you have a sense of the plan?
Oh, yeah. I think the JPA was formed with
Joint
San
Powers
Bernardino
Authority.
County and Ontario and Fontana to look at solutions to this foreclosure epidemic in San Bernardino County. Part of that was also allowing the use of eminent domain. I think there's other solutions that are out there. I don't think that using eminent domain for this underwater mortgage area is something that we should be supporting.
So you are not in support
I'm not
of
in
that plan?
support of using eminent domain because, number one, using it in this fashion, it's never been done anywhere else in the United States.
But it's innovative. You got to give it
Both
to them.
sides are saying that it's going to be there's going to be legal challenges to
Right.
it. So that means injunctions will be put out there. The court battles could go on for 4 years, 8 years, an indefinite period of time. And what you're seeing is the market starting to correct itself. So why should San Bernardino County be the first one in the United States to tackle this issue when we got far more other issues to deal with?
Well, what can any governmental entity do then when literally you're looking at ground zero for the foreclosure crisis? I mean, what can be done?
I think what's going on right now, looking at actual credible solutions that are coming in, right, and seeing what actually could be done without the use of that eminent domain. I think that overstepping into the capital markets in our area and throughout the United States, we see what that happens has a long-term effect. It could be a more drastic effect than what we're trying to do now, especially if it's never been tested anywhere in the United States.
I do want to ask you about your experience with the San Manuel Indians. You were the chairman of this mighty tribe. And so, you know, we forget San Manuel is a sovereign nation. Yeah, it's within America we have these sovereign nations. So how did that experience, how will that experience inform your membership on the board should you be successful on November 6th?
I think being able to fulfill and seeing and growing a community from basically nothing, putting in the infrastructure, going out in bond offerings, doing these different things and providing for the community, and working hand in hand with the community for different future projects and growth, I think is something that's actually, people don't really truly understand the role of a tribal government.
No,
and
I agree.
It's the same responsibility for any county, state, municipalities.
But it feels as if, and I'm not talking about the San Manuel tribe specifically, but it does feel as if there's a little tension between tribal governments and other governments. People don't understand it. How will you try to eliminate that unease or that? You know what I'm getting at? It's hard to articulate, but I think you know what I'm saying.
It comes back to education. Certainly, tribal governments have been part of the thread of the United States of America since its inception. And so what's been going on is there's been an outreach with the educational institutions.
Sure.
And this week we're running a conference at Cal State University San Bernardino, the 14th year, and I'm really engaging with third and fourth graders, letting them know the true sights and sounds of California's first people.
As we conclude, I must ask you, how have you enjoyed running this campaign? Because, you know, it's a little different than the community college district, than the tribe. Huge geographic district.
It is. It's huge. But I have I grew up on the Seminole Indian Reservation when there was nothing there. And it was education that allowed me to get that second chance at life, becoming the first one in my family to attain an associate's degree, then my bachelor's of science degree from Cal State San Bernardino, and my master's in business administration from the University of Redlands. So seeing the genuine need in San Bernardino County to move forward, to create the jobs, and to have elected start working together has given me that opportunity to get engaged. I have the qualifications and passions to see this community move forward.
We wish you the best of luck. His name is James Ramos. He is running for the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino County. When we come back, we'll be speaking with a current member of the board. His name is Brad Mitzelfelt. I'm Brad Pomerance. We'll be right back on California Edition. Welcome back to California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Glad you're still with us. Our guest, Brad Mitzelfelt. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino County with so much beautiful space in your district specifically. It's the largest geographic county in the country, in the lower 48, or is it the country?
In the contiguous.
In the
US.
contiguous.
Yeah.
And your district specifically is just magnificent, majestic. I want to talk about areas near 29 Palms and what we know as the Johnson Valley. Talk to me about the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center. And mind you, he's a former Marine, or once a Marine, always Marine.
That's what we say. And Supervisor Neil Derry and I both actually trained at 29 Palms.
Together?
At some time. No, we
Different
didn't know
ages.
each other before,
Right.
but we both served in the Middle East in the first Gulf War there, the Operation Desert Storm.
And as I understand it, at that Marine Corps base, a huge percentage of Marines that go to Afghanistan will train there at some point.
Yeah. Most Marines that go to the Middle East go for desert training at 29 Palms, the Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center. Most soldiers in the Army who go to Fort Irwin, which is nearby,
Sure.
also in the Mojave Desert in my district.
And why is that? Just give us some background if you can.
They get realistic training.
Right.
They do live fire at 29 Palms. They have urban training areas in both areas, very realistic urban training, right down to dealing with simulated locals in the different countries. They deal with the explosive devices and how to defeat
Right.
those and detect those. So it's just fantastic training. Tens of thousands of our military get prepared there.
And as I understand it, though, because this area is it's really a terrific site, a realistic site, as you described, there's a desire to expand
Yes.
this combat center.
Yes.
Explain that desire.
Well, the Marine Corps Center there at 29 Palms is the biggest Marine base in the country. It's over 900,
Literally.
over 900 square miles. And they do live fire training there. You need a lot of room to do that with air support. So need lots of room. They, because of the weaponry and the sophistication, they need to be able to train over greater distances. And they need to, they say they have a need to train 3 battalions side by side over a long distance, and they say they simply don't have enough room in the current base. So what they're proposing is to expand into the Johnson Valley, which is near Lucerne Valley, near Yucca Valley.
Sure.
And where over 500,000 people a year go out to use off-highway vehicles. Hollywood does a lot of filming there.
Right.
Valkyrie, the desert
course.
scene, North Africa, was filmed there.
And so let's talk about Johnson Valley. Give us a better sense of how valuable it is
Yeah.
for those that respect and honor the outdoors,
Sure.
want to partake in outdoor activities.
Well, it's the largest off-highway vehicle area, I believe, in the country. It's about 189,000 acres. And it has some very unique terrain. And there's an event called King of the Hammers that is a rock climbing event with these vehicles. They're amazing. And they climb up this mountain over these giant boulders. 20 to 30,000 people in a single weekend go out there
Wow.
to take part in this. And it's a big economic engine for our area. And well, it frankly is right next door to the Marines, and the federal government owns all that land. So they have to decide whether the public is going to have full access to this area or whether the Marines are going to enlarge their base.
And here's what's interesting. We have Neil Derry on the Board of Supervisors. We have Brad Mitzelfelt on the Board of Supervisors, both former Marines, and both have come out against the expansion, this alternative.
Yes.
You're not opposed to an expansion generally, but you do not want to see them expand into the Johnson Valley.
That's correct, and there are alternatives, and we maintain there are alternatives. And you know, Marines are the most adaptable species in the world, in my opinion.
Species being
Right.
the key phrase.
Once the decision is made, they march and they adapt. And I believe sincerely that in Congress and the president will have the final say on this question.
But here's what's interesting. It's a very complicated issue because you have issues dealing with desert protection. You have issues dealing with combat readiness. You have issues dealing with off-roaders. I mean, it's not just a simple, oh, let's expand. It's not easy.
Right. It's a dwindling resource. It's the public lands that our people like to use for recreation are a dwindling resource. And the only use, really, the only uses that aren't mitigated, which means when you go out to build some project like, say, a solar farm, you have to go out and acquire 2 or 3 acres of private land for every acre of land that you disturb.
Right.
In this case, even public land,
Right,
even
right.
if it's just
I
even if it's
understand
public
that.
land.
It's the mitigation that you described.
Right. Now, the net loss of that usable land or developable land is not treated the same for things like recreation. It doesn't have to be offset like conservation does. It doesn't.
Really?
Right.
And that's a federal law?
It's just a practice.
Oh, I understand.
It's not really a law.
But what's interesting about this situation you've been placed into as a former Marine opposing a specific expansion is that you believe there are alternatives.
Yes. Well, the preferred alternative that the Marines are seeking is that about 60% of the Johnson Valley would become off limits to the public completely. About 20 additional percent of the land would be available about 10 months out of the year, but the Marines would manage it. And that's something we've never seen. We've never seen the Marines manage an off-highway vehicle area, and some people are worried that they might not keep it open all that much if they feel there's some kind of danger. You know, there are problems with live fire when the rounds don't hit the target. You may have ordnance out there, and they don't want the public out there in any kind of risk. So another alternative is to allow the BLM to keep it. They wouldn't do live fire in that particular area.
Right.
But the BLM, the Bureau of Land Management, could just issue them a permit, and it's done all over the country. I've trained in national forests and national parks even, well, national forests at least.
Sure.
And you know, because the federal agencies work pretty well together, and they can just issue each other permits. Those are a couple alternatives. Another one is an eastern expansion that I don't believe was actually fully considered, and it was kind of for political reasons because it was a wilderness area, even though many people believe that it should not have been designated a wilderness area because of past impacts and resource values that just aren't there. So
where do we stand now?
Well, I think that, in my opinion, in the current environment with our engagements in the desert, this movement was this proposal was based on a strategy based on us being in Afghanistan and Iraq for the foreseeable future.
And we're not.
So I think we can step back and take some more time to consider this.
Now, what's also interesting, if I may, is the future congressman representing that area, if we look at polls today, is likely to be Paul Cook. I mean, anything could happen. And Paul Cook, a member of the State Assembly, is also a former Marine. Yeah. So I have to presume that folks will turn to him and say, former Marine, what do you think?
Well, this will be in his district. And if he wins the election, he will have a big say in whether it's approved by Congress. And
will he, though? I mean, that's what's interesting.
I don't know. I haven't asked him that.
Right, but not so much asked him, but will he have the power? I mean, or is it so high above even a congressman's pay grade that he just won't be able to get involved?
Well, Congress is a co-equal branch, and and congressmen listen to each other.
Right.
Whether a brand new freshman will have.
Right.
The thing is, I don't know where he is on the issue, but I think he's fair-minded, and
You've endorsed him.
Yes, I have.
And you were an opponent in that seat, so
that's right.
Clearly, I mean, you understand.
So where it stands is the Secretary of the Navy will issue a record of decision probably by the end of this year, and early next year, Congress and the President have to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. So if people
So what do you? Yeah, please.
If people want to be heard on the issue, the best thing to do is to write your congressman. Congressman Buck McKeon is the chairman of the Armed Services Committee, and he's out of Santa Clarita, so he's a good one to write. But if you go to savethehammers.org.
Okay, yeah, please. I'll put that on the screen. I see it.
Savethehammers.org. You can get information on how to weigh in on the issue, as well as the Corva, corva.org. That's the California Off-Road Vehicle Association, and they're actively involved in this issue.
I always appreciate you bringing to us issues that we wouldn't know about, but for Brad Mitzelfelt, looking into the very specific issues facing California. His name is Brad Mitzelfelt. He's a member of the Board of Supervisors in San Bernardino County. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for watching California Edition.